Namaste, and welcome back to another episode of MSL Lead Chronicles, where leaders learn from leaders. I'm Mary Morton, and along with my buddy Chad Fellers, we have casual talk about the challenges and successes in medical affairs with the most exciting and impactful professionals in pharma. As always, we have another great one for you today, so stick around.
Welcome back to another conversation here at MSL Lead Chronicles, where leaders learn from leaders. I'm your host, Chad Fellers, with my nifty sidekick, Mary Morton. How are you, Mary?
Cool. I was wondering what that stall was going to be, if you were going to have something to say about me.
Well, I always have something to say about you. Most of the times it's good in front of you. Well, I actually say all things in front of you, whether they're good or bad. But no, nothing but good things. I've got my new MSL Lead Chronicles jersey that was provided by you. I love it.
Mm-hmm. And be grateful, because that was supposed to be a Longhorn t-shirt that you're supposed, because the Longhorns beat the
Yes, they did.
the poor piggies.
The poor piggy. That's right. Don't act so
Yes.
happy about it, but I told you it was going to happen. I was wondering if I was going to get that shirt in the mail.
I got you this one instead.
Well, wow.
We can have a rematch in basketball season.
Well, sounds fair enough. Yeah, we can do that. Or baseball. Baseball's even better. Anyway, really excited about this, Mary. Our conversation today, talking about high impact teams and really the key components of those with our guests. So without further ado, why don't you tell our audience who we have on the show today?
Happily. Fellow Austinite, Elizabeth Kupferer. She is currently the National Director of U.S. Field Medical with Nestle Health Science, and she's spent more than 20 years in medical affairs across devices, diagnostics, and pharma. And she's now leading some really exciting work in the microbiome space, especially around restoring the microbiome after recurrent C. diff. Is that right?
That's right.
So before industry, Beth did just about everything on the clinical side: nursing, hospital leadership, private practice as a nurse practitioner, educating. She also has a long history in women's health and helped launch several, which we discussed. Fascinating. I told her she needs to write a book. Several first of their kind products over the years. Talk about innovating. So she did get her bachelor's in nursing and her master's in nursing at the University of Texas medical branch. And then she got her PhD at the University of Texas in women's health with a side of gender studies. She's also published very widely, very in-demand speaker at the medical affairs conferences, very passionate about developing MSLs, which is where we are going today, and creating teams that feel bonded together and cohesive and aligned around their common mission, which is to improve patient outcomes. So welcome to the show.
Well, thank you.
I typically like to give people who may not know you a chance to get to know you a little bit. I have a few hot seat questions for you. The first of which is, are you familiar with the concept of a walk-up song?
Yes.
Okay. So what do you think your walk-up song would be?
Oh, Lord. Cecilia. I just love the beat of that song. And I think you can't, I like it. You get up, it's got a good beat. Everyone is energized. So I think that's what I would use.
100%. So do you know that song, Chad?
No, I'm just shaking. I'm shaking my head up and down. No. And what's so crazy about this is I was a music major, Elizabeth, and I used to listen to music all the time. Now it's pretty much just talk radio, sports radio when we're complaining about the Hogs, but nevertheless. So no, I'm not familiar with this. I'm going to have to look this one up as well too.
It's Simon and Garfunkel.
Simon and Garfunkel. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just got a great beat, and just makes you smile. You can't not.
Okay. What is something you wish you loved, but you just don't?
Oh, that's a hard one. Wished I loved.
For me, it's Pilates.
Oh, I love Pilates. That's my thing. So
Okay.
let's see,
I
what
wish
do
I
I
did.
that I loved? Well, Chad, you were talking about muscle earlier, so I'm trying to build muscle. Pilates does a great job, but you have to take it up and you have to do some weightlifting. And I do it, but I don't love it, but I have to make myself go. But
Okay.
Pilates every day, easy to
I
go.
was going to say expense reports. That would have been my thing that I would love to like administrative work, but I just can't if I'm being honest with it when I'm for my teams. But
Now,
I'll
dude,
go with
if
that.
you loved administrative work, there would be something wrong with you. I
Fair
think
enough.
nobody.
Fair enough.
It's a
I
necessary
don't know what
evil of the world.
MSL that does or anybody.
Nope. No, you're right. You're exactly right.
All right, and so that's the last question, which I think will actually kind of lend ourselves into the topic pretty well too.
Mhm.
Um, so what is a skill set or a competency that you didn't realize would matter in your career, but you're like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad I have that.
I think that flexibility, being able to pivot very easily. I tend to like change. And so when something comes along, I'm like, which way can we pivot? So I think that just being flexible and enjoying change.
Excellent, love it.
So, Elizabeth, one of the things that we do here on the podcast is really give our listeners really the key takeaways of what our conversation is going to be to kick things off.
Right. I think being in this industry for so long and recognizing that, being in the MSL role for a couple of years, there's this need to kind of develop or change. So that's, kind of what we're going to be talking about today. But one of the most important things is then to figure out what they really want to do. So that's defining those career goals, being very self-reflective and knowing where they want to go. The other one is, making sure that you're getting the mentorship and the coaching that you need. And the final one is networking. Networking is extremely important in this field.
Yeah, I
Agree
would
with
say
all
that's
those.
absolutely. Well, if I can dig right in, I've got a question right out of the gate, and it's one I've been kind of excited to ask since we talked about this topic a few weeks ago. Is that you've hired a lot of first timers as MSLs, and maybe they're still just trying to get their sea legs at being an MSL. But how early or how soon after they get started do you think we should start thinking about defining what their career goals are going to be?
Yeah, I think never too early. And that's a great question. And one of the reasons and I've been very successful to hiring people without MSL experience because I'm really looking for their background expertise and their passion. That alone just makes them very successful. Um, so I think when I'm interviewing, I'm looking at all these different skills that they have. So, and not only will they be a fit in my team, but how will they be in the organization? So I think long term when I'm hiring, because I really want to keep people engaged. It takes a long time to get a team working. So again, I think it's never too early to think about it. Now, that said, I always say we need to focus on, that first 1 to 2 years being an MSL. It takes 1 to 2 years to really get your sea legs and get going.
Yeah. I'm glad you said that around setting expectations. I think that's appropriate as well too, right? As far as the current role that they're in, and I think one of the things as I've networked over, specifically the COVID time, right? So
Mm.
when many new hires started during the COVID space, not used to traveling, all
Yeah.
virtual, and really it was just a different type of role. They were ready to move on within a year, and again, to medical strategy or those types of things, it's like I I just don't think you have a full understanding of the role to be able to leverage that experience to help support them in a different way. So I fully agree. I think having those conversations are important early on. But giving that same type of context of why why it may take a little bit of time to a journey to get there is really critical with that.
Can I interject real quick before
Yeah,
you
yeah.
move on? Because actually, as a recruiter, I talk to many of those, you know, 1 year, 18-month MSLs. They're like, now I want to be a medical director. And of course, they don't want to go back to their boss and say, I've been talking to a recruiter and they suggested I talk to you about whether or not this makes sense for me. But how would you advise someone who is kind of in that spot? Like, okay, I've done this for a year now. I want to do this, whether they're ready or not.
Yeah. Well, whether they're ready or not, that's a key point, and being very honest, when you're giving people feedback. That was a hard thing for me. I used to softball things. Now I don't do it so much anymore.
Yeah.
But I mean, over the past several years, I've had people come in that they really wanted to be a medical director. And I thought, and on hiring them, I thought they would be a great medical director at some point. And, I encourage them to stay in the role, really, learn it, because that's going to benefit them so much more when they're in headquarter medicals and they really understand that MSL role. That's a very cohesive team. So I just set that expectation, of where to go next. And then, also whether they're ready or not, I think that's where you just have to have some, you know, understanding the strategy is very important. Not all MSLs grasp that right away, but once they're in the medical affairs or moving up, they really need to understand that. So I think, just giving them very direct feedback on areas that they need to, kind of work on, projects that give them, peek over the fence to see if they really want to do it. Because I have one MSL that did go into it was a physician, went into the medical director role, didn't like it, came back out in the field and really enjoyed that better. It
Mm.
was, that difficult conversation, kind of, is it a downgrade to go back out to the field, in his mind, but and not really. That's where he thrived and he did very well. So,
Yeah, I think it's important understanding the why. Like, why are you wanting to move, or what is it? What's the and full disclosure, I'm one of those from like, ooh, there's a new flashy little toy or things like that. I think we should open up a Krispy Kreme. Oh, we should open up
Oh
a
yeah,
Waffle
squirrel.
House, right? I'm all over the place, right, with this.
mhm,
But I think understanding what drives people and what their giftings are, and learning that and helping be able to point them in the direction. Sometimes people just may have such a limited focus of what their current role is, they're missing out on some of those things. So I
mhm,
really appreciate what you shared about how you can tie those two together. So we hear oftentimes, right, about the field and the headquarters is often disconnected. And so if you're going to step into a headquarters role, how do you make sure that is really an extension and versus a different function, right? So really wise words. So thinking about your MSL team, you're talking about the goal setting. How often do you think that MSLs, or do you have them or encourage them rather to revisit their goals? And how are you providing feedback, or are you providing feedback in that process where it's really meaningful versus more of just this thing that you do at the end of the year as part of an interview year review process?
right. So, I mean, I have set that as a performance objective for myself, the development. So it's a quarterly check-in, and it's formal. I mean, it meaning that we actually sit down, we review things. Nestle has a system, and many companies do, making sure that their profile is aligned with what their goals are, so that if there's opportunity, someone will see it and they'll be able to get those things that aligned. So I think I sit down minimum quarterly, or if topics come up that has something to do with their development, make sure that I can make those connections.
Is it set aside time versus just like during a normal one-on-one, or
Yeah. It's usually a setting aside. So mid-year is the most
yep,
formal one. It's like, yeah, we're going to, discuss goals and kind of lock them in. But I'm big on one-on-ones. I know they take a lot of time up, but that's where, we have those discussions. So yeah, at least once a year as a formal sit down, let's make sure that your profile, we're getting you everything that you need. And then, that weave that discussion in
gotcha.
on your one-on-ones.
So are there any tools that you use when you're talking about like reassessing or reevaluating the goals that a person has set for themselves or that you've set for them?
Yeah, Novartis, AbbVie, Nestle, most companies, especially the larger ones that will have, if you in their HR organization, will have something that helps them define them. And they're all very similar. It's like, you know, what are you currently doing? What are the transferable skills? What do you need to get there? And so, some of it is most of it's going to be hands-on, right? Giving them opportunities, but like what kind of courses or so I think most companies will have something. An HR department will have something to work up with. That's what I use.
Have they been different? I mean, very, very different from one company to another, or have they been pretty much similar?
Yeah, pretty similar. Pretty similar.
One of the things that I don't do, I'm thinking through this, Elizabeth. I love having these. I'm so selfishly because it helps me grow as a leader as well too. How often do you think about what those goals are in the midst of your day in day out conversation, or your weekly conversations? Or, I mean, the thing that where I'm going with this is thinking about, I try to encourage the team to track all of their successes or all the different
Yeah.
things on a monthly basis in OneNote, et cetera. So I
Mhm.
didn't know from your perspective how often you were intentional in being always listening with that lens. That's something I think I could do better on. I didn't know if that's part of what you've learned over the years or not.
Yeah, I definitely have learned over the years to listen better for opportunities. I had a discussion just today that had to do with just a scientific interaction and something they were going to do with this one contract. And then I realized what the person was talking about was, pulling together some strategy stuff. And so I thought, oh, that's right up your alley. Let's talk about how you can apply that to this lead strategy role that you're doing. So I try to think about it, you know, a lot. Um, and I think I told Mary this. It wasn't until I went to work at Novartis and I stepped out of women's health. So I'd been an expert at women's health for million year, it felt like. And so I was the clinical expert, and I thought that that was my superpower. When I got to Novartis, it was ophthalmology with a ophthalmologist that are experienced. It was an experienced team I walked into. I wanted to do something different, and I realized I knew nothing. I knew
Yeah.
nothing clinically. So, and Novartis is also good about coaching. So then that's where I started listening more and making sure that, they're the experts, not me. And,
Yeah.
kind of supporting them and giving them what they need and listening for those, what I call their superpowers. I always look, what is it
Mhm.
that they're talking about? And sometimes I'll do even those formal assessments with your teams, the color charts or the ways you work, HBDI, and that will give you a little bit more uh, as well. But yeah, it wasn't until I stepped out of my comfort zone that I started listening more.
Well,
Yeah.
it's kind of interesting, and then maybe I'm gonna probably make a really corny um, metaphor.
Probably.
Yes, probably, because it was ophthalmology, which eyes, one of the 5 or multiple senses, but, you're not in your niche, your area, your therapeutic lane, and then your other you at least you realized your other strengths were stronger than maybe you thought before, like, I'm deaf in one ear, and so my sense of smell is almost annoying. So it got
Yeah.
a little bit stronger that way. It's true. Like my eyes are bad, and I have to have ear surgery in February. I can't
No.
hear out of this ear at all. I'm not even sure why I have an AirPod in there because I can't hear. But
But you're right, that it is. It's like a pivot. It was, I realized that I really love leading teams.
Yeah.
And I like leading teams that are making a difference, overall, like that's that one. But yes, I thought, oh, I had these skills I didn't know. So it was a good growth opportunity for me, a scary one.
And quite honestly, I mean, when you're in this role, I mean, having a visibility and understanding a cursory level of the information is important, but that's not really the role from a leadership standpoint that can really drive things to make things uh, more impactful, I think, quite honestly. I mean, you only have so much time in the day and so many strengths that you can leverage as well, too, just from a capacity standpoint. And so what you just said right there, it puts you in a position to really lead well by being in that. You chose to step into that area of being uncomfortable to really accelerate your leadership skills. So anyway, just an interesting observation, at least from my standpoint.
Right. You begin to look at what they need to do their job.
Yes.
And that's kind of where this whole development, it is something I'm really passionate about. And, I volunteer for mentor programs. I'm in one at Nestle, but it's what can you do the team itself, what can you do to get all of the things out of the way so they can do their job?
Yeah.
And you see differently instead of, they're the clinical expertise. I had to let that go. I mean, I got a PhD. I had to let that go. I'm not the clinical expert anymore. They are.
Yeah, your team is your KOLs now, right? So you need to know them inside and out to propel them and make them feel valued, similar to what we did externally.
I would love to get into talking about the coaching and mentoring piece. Because I mean, do you have because you were talking about how much you value that, and you spend a lot of your own personal time on that.
Mhm.
I'd love to hear a story where you've because some people will go to a mentor for advice and suggestions and direction, like a best friend asking for advice, and then they do whatever they want to do anyway. But I would
Mhm.
love to hear a story about either when you've been mentored, but I'd much rather hear when you've mentored somebody else, where you've seen this blossom into a success story.
Yes, I know quite a few stories, and they'll probably know who I'm talking about if I, if I talk
Well, as
about
long
them.
as it's a positive story, it's not a
It is
bad thing, right?
positive stories. Yeah. So I one was someone who was external, was looking to was on the commercial team, and was had a little bit of a clinical background, but didn't have the doctorate degree or the pedigree for the MSL role. And they had come from sales. And I remember early on, I was like, oh, you can't go from sales to medical, right? And so in this instance, just, gave her, advice, so explained what the role is and how it's going to be a little different. It's a different skill set, but that she would need to, go back and go to school. And, then, and this was like a clinical doctor in practice for a while. And that's exactly what they did. They went through, they got the clinical doctorate and ended up, becoming an MSL later on. So,
I love those
it's
stories.
career takes, a little bit of time to happen. And who knows, she may have ended up just staying in practice, and that was fine too. But you needed to have that to bring value to the MSL role. So,
Well, I think it shows a lot of dedication when you're mid-career already.
mhm.
I mean,
Yeah.
I think it says a lot about what that person's dedication and mission to their own goals.
The fun part of that too is when people reach out and you speak with them and they, years later they have a job and they reach out and you get these texts all the time. Hey,
Mm.
I'm doing this, or, and it's just super exciting. I had one MSL who was, uh, she had the clinical experience in one of the places where I worked, and she was very good at she knew the job was open, and she networked it, got to me, and and wanted to get this job, and she didn't have any MSL experience. I'm open to that, so she joined the team, and she really wanted to go into a leadership role. So we did a lot of like lead roles and things over time, and she ended up like a VP of medical affairs. So
Wow.
those are, you just watch people grow. In 20 years, you do see a lot of that. But I think, seeing, and, it's just like seeing what that strength was, and you knew they would get there. And when you see it, you're just like, so proud for them.
Yeah.
So coaching and mentoring are two different things. I guess there is some overplay in both of those. If you were to reflect back, is there a degree of, or how is it different between a brand new MSL and a senior MSL or a principal, right? I mean, would you say that there's a certain ratio is always the same as far as coaching and mentoring? Is there a different approach that you take from a newbie versus someone that's been in it for 15 years?
Yeah, I think on the mentorship part, that is a little bit different, right? There's a lot on their side that, that they need to know exactly what they want and, set up these different mentorships or, however they occur. So I think that's one thing. And it's not necessarily your manager is going to be that mentor.
Yeah.
Um, Coaching from a is different. It's and I struggled with this because I like to like layer up the nice feedback so that they don't really hear the negative in there because I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings.
Yeah.
And what you're not doing anybody a disservice, by you're not
Yeah.
giving them the honest truth. So I think early on, coaching is very important with the new MSL. They need direct feedback because they really don't know what they don't know.
Yeah.
Um, and I think, I think that approach is different. It's direct and you're getting feedback from them. And then someone that's, along the way, I think coaching is still important, but that is honing in on what skills do they need to
Hmm.
develop. And then that goes back to that self-reflection and defining what is it I really need to do to get to this next step? Do I want your job? Do I want to go to medical affairs? Do I want to go to clinical ops? Do I want to go to commercial or marketing? Right.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that definitely makes sense. And fair point about the difference between from a manager standpoint, the mentoring and coaching with that. But yeah, I would agree. The direct feedback, I think it's one of those things. My approach, or that I've tried to incorporate more, is asking more questions to let them arrive to certain decisions. So just helping them arrive to the reason why it makes sense to start thinking about things a little bit differently, and building some of that trust with them to move that way. So about the coaching, speaking of coaching, let's talk a little bit about the idea of structured development. So what's your experience been with formal coaching programs? Is that something that you're an advocate of? Would love to hear more about that.
Well, it depending on the size company and where you're at. So I look internally. Even I've worked in small organizations, so even smaller companies may have something in their HR. So, um, and that is part of your kind of your talent development, where you're kind of calibrating and seeing, who's your talent and who you're going to be able to provide those resources are. So that's why development discussions are so important. I tell people it's not just me, it's me sitting down each year, sometimes more than once a year, sitting down and saying, here's the team members and here's where they're going to go. So, um, and then they can align them with these formal programs. They're very expensive, so they're kind of really
Mm,
holding tight to the chest.
Mhm.
But if you have done the work and you've got their profile set up and you're getting them out there and visible, you're getting them visible, so I do think the formal programs really work well. I have
okay.
an MSL that you know did one of their early leadership, and it's so self-reflective, and it helps them decide whether they want to go into a leadership role. It's quite
Mm,
different than a contributor who gets a lot of attention, and you're have all of that face time as opposed to leading teams. You're really there to kind of support them. It's less about you and more about them. So.
So for these like truly structured development programs,
Mhm,
that maybe target preparing them for leadership
mhm.
or improving their strategic thinking or project management skills, those kinds of things. What types of those programs do you think are more likely to move the needle for MSLs who are wanting to get to those other places in life?
I think if you can find a program out of your HR, or you can research those external where they are doing like a 360 evaluate. They're getting feedback,
Mhm.
which I think is important, and they're hands on. So there's a lot of accountability in completing the program. So, uh, you know, as far as researching them externally, I haven't had to do that very much. I've been able to find those programs internally, but I think they're very successful because it's in one of the programs that they have at Nestle, the person that's in the program also has these one-on-ones and very specific things they need to talk to you about. And I'm just always amazed on how they get to these, the self-reflection on what they need to work on.
So, for organizations like MAPS, that they have sort of formal mentor programs you can like apply for. Some of them are a little more structured and some of them are a little less structured. Have you participated in mentoring people through professional organizations like that?
Yes. So I've done like informal mentoring.
Mhm.
Um, in a couple of the companies I worked at, they have a formal mentorship where they do a matching and you set your goals up front. And so I think that's helpful because it's important for someone who's going to be mentored, and actually did a mentorship for myself this past year. So I was a mentee. You have to prepare, you have to take ownership of that because it's about connection, it's about feedback, because you're looking for someone to help give you that guidance, but they're not here to sort it out for you. You have to,
Yeah.
I think that structure, when it's structured, is very helpful. I also think that I've done MSL Society had a general mentorship, mentor circles. I think those are great when you're just getting started and kind of sorting things out. It's just
One
that accountability, right?
one of the things that I loved about what you said is that you can be a mentor and be a mentee.
Yes.
And I think, the new, maybe 2, 3 year MSLs could be a mentor to,
Yeah.
rising MSLs too. I mean, there's a lot for us to give to each other and help each other develop in their careers.
I have an MSL on our team right now who's just very innovative thinker, all the digitalization and things like that. I mean, that's my reverse mentor. I always go to her. It's like, make me think about this differently, challenge me. I don't want to do it the same way, but I don't want to change for the sake of change. So I think
Yeah.
it's refreshing and when you're bringing in people that aren't MSLs, they can give, I mean, if you have someone that's been an MSL for a while, we're all kind of in sync, but sometimes they'll look at something and you're like, oh, I never thought about it that way. We could do,
Yeah.
they give you a better way of doing it, right?
Goodness, it happens to me every day.
Me too.
I do like the idea of creating some objectivity as well, too, versus it all just being a subjective, hey, I really like this person or we connected really well, which is certainly a component of it. And it's essential to be able to carry conversations and story tell and all those types of things. But there is something too about having some skin in the game, like you
Yeah.
mentioned, to really try to, and it's proof in the pudding, right? When you, it equips your managers to be able to go to bat for you to make those types of recommendations. I mean, you have data. Let's think of it as a pure scientific way, right? We have data to support it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
If you have data to support, then that will, it puts it, you've done everything that you can to control a situation, and support your team. The individual has as well too. And it's up to the company to find an opportunity for them, or they position themselves to maybe look outside of the company if there's not something that aligns to them at that time. So it's a win-win, quite honestly. And it creates accountability for everyone in the
Mhm.
process beyond just beyond the manager's or the leader's job, right? I think that's one of the things that I'm really trying to continue to really build, is this idea of being solution oriented, not necessarily to have all the answers, but to come, instead of just coming with problems or I want this it's more of, hey, here's my plan to come to, or I'm wanting to do this. I've put together this roadmap. I'd love to get your thoughts on what I've put together. Does it make the most sense, or where are there opportunities to maybe shift this a little bit to project it? That's completely different than, hey, I'm not happy in my job, or I really think I should be in this. What are you going to do for me to get there? Right. So I think that just some of the things that I've picked up over the years, that trying to help set people, teaching them how to lead and learn how to do that in the process before they actually take that actual formalized step. So,
Well, I was thinking about when you were. I love this expression that I don't know if I've ever heard it, but it makes me think of like Wilson from Home Improvement. But when you were talking about taking a peek over the fence
Uh-huh.
to kind of see, how the other halves are living and seeing if that is
yep.
something you want to do. So, where do you feel like offering or connecting your MSLs with cross-functional projects where they are partnering with functions maybe they want to be in one day? Like, um, how would you go about making that happen?
Right.
Or is it more like they raise their hand and say, "I want to do this"? Or do you feel like it's a combination of both?
It's probably both, but it's a product of those routine, regular conversations. You really do need regular discussions, and because we get busy, right? It's like I always say, I slept last night. I don't remember anymore, right? So like you have to have these conversations to remember and keep it, front of mind. So it's up to, the individual to say, hey, I saw that. Is that something that I can do? And then me, when I'm like, when there's a discussion, I'm like, oh, that works with, so and so. We can align that. There's a project coming up. This person has this great expertise. Let's let them do that. Right. The other thing I think is important too on the team. So there's, you want it to be this consistency and fairness. You need to open the vest, and they all need to know what their superpowers are. We talk about that regularly. Or maybe, doing any kind of assessment. What do you feel like your superpower is? What do you do well? What skills do you have? So when a project's
Yeah.
assigned, they say, this went to, her because this is what, her expertise. And, he had been working on this. And so that way there's some consistency in how people are getting these opportunities.
That is so interesting too, because like, what if you had a team full of think about that show Heroes, and like the one person that could like break their bones and then they'd be fine. Like, what if everybody on the team were all that same person and they all had the same superpower? So it kind of goes back to, I think maybe it was the episode we had with Shanti,
Mhm.
talking about, you got to think about how you're hiring too, so that you
You
do have a
do.
team of
Yes.
Avengers who can all kind of manage or lead or pick up different things that are
Yeah.
their strengths. I love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. The
I'm
art of
sorry.
hiring, right? Making sure and checking in with the team. I'll often say, what skill set do we need? What are we missing? What can we add to it? And they're very intuitive on what they would like.
Hmm.
I love that you
Hmm.
do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Because
I'm
they're,
gonna write
I'm
that
not out
down.
there with them every day. Like,
So, all right, Elizabeth, on this is fascinating. So, what about? I'm going to throw another scenario out. It's not a game of gotcha, I promise. It's so. You talked a lot about having a lot of people that have not had industry experience and bringing them on board, and that's something that you enjoy. Both aligned with that. Um, we're thinking about MSLs. Or there's a lot of drive, I think, that comes with that, right?
oh,
It's
that
very
is.
easy to see.
Mhm.
They're driven, they're hungry, this, that, and the other. What about your thoughts on MSLs that really are um, driven in a different way, right? They really aren't looking for the next best thing or the next shiny toy. They're happy as an MSL. How do you, I mean,
I love them.
is that a good thing? Is
I
it a
love
bad
them.
thing?
I
Tell us more. And then what do you do to ensure, or what's your approach to their growth, to make sure that they're still learning in the role that they're doing?
Yeah. That's an awesome question because I love when someone is so engaged in the role and they're so good at it and they make such a difference, you don't want them to go anywhere, right? So sometimes
Yeah.
you have to remind yourself you still have to make sure that they're getting all of their development. So I think in almost every team I've had one or two people that really love being an MSL. That's what they want to do, and having conversations of them and how they can maybe develop in different ways. A lot of times for them it's leadership skills, how they, because they're
Hmm.
often an informal leader out there, or maybe innovative things, maybe being involved in some, an AI initiative, or, bringing, so seeing what it is that they like to be involved in so that they have
Mm,
something that's energizing them, but also maybe also, encouraging them to do other things externally, right? To kind of, uh, you know, uh, kind of that work-life balance. Like, what can you do? I've had people go back to school to do different things, right? So it's not all about work. It's just keeping them engaged. But I think, and the team sometimes that keeps them motivated as well.
mm,
Yeah.
mm.
But I
Yeah.
love because you know as well as I do, the longer someone's an MSL, the more expertise they have, the more, I mean, my goal is to have this team that everybody's just envious of. They're the science experts, right? You hire for that you're the KOLs, they feel like it's peer to peer. You go to a meeting and it's like they're friends. If you could just
Mhm.
keep that team forever. But I know that at some point, they get a little burned out. Hopefully you got a pipeline going, right?
Yeah, that
Involve them in
is that
early
is
line stuff, because they can the more experienced they are, the more time they can balance to do some of these extra projects. The
yeah,
newer they are, they have all their administrative things, and it's more difficult for them to balance those extra projects.
yeah, yeah. It can be overwhelming for sure. All right, so I think we have one. This has been a really good conversation. I think that there's one more area we wanted to talk about, or you mentioned in one of your key takeaways, and
Networking, yeah. Yeah. I think, my conversations on network even begin before I even hire somebody. I get a lot of people contact me through LinkedIn. I'd like to be an MSL, tell me a little bit more. And I do take, the opportunity to speak to some if I can. But networking and introducing them to individuals, maybe like if there's an MSL there in Missouri, and I know an MSL that's there, and I say, would you
yep,
take a moment to talk to this person? So I think connecting them with previous team members, having, a LinkedIn presence, and, connecting there, MAPS, MSL Society, any of these organizations, listening to, the podcasts, and staying involved, and yourself getting out there and giving back, right?
mm,
Presenting at these different things. So I think networking is, I make a lot of connections as well.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just thinking about like the internal networking that, for people on your team that are looking to grow within the organization. I think it's almost less intimidating to try to network with a potential KOL that maybe you'll see once a quarter than like a VP of whatever at your company that is
So
going to
true.
always know who you are as long as you work there. Like how do you get over that sort of, I don't know if it's stage fright, but how do you encourage
Yeah.
someone to make those?
Good question. Yeah, because I always encourage like skip level meetings, or, if there's some making the connection, a lot of times I'll make that initial connection or introduction that will help them. And then just give them a few key points, right? And, talk, on how to, like from an executive leadership, how to get to your point very quickly, use your time wisely, right? And if we're ever in a large meeting like national sales meetings or things like that, seek these people out, take that opportunity. But it is very intimidating to do. Yeah. But I think if you can, barter that connection, that's helpful.
really, really, really good. Any final thoughts you want to leave with our listeners before we wrap things up?
It's just continue to be actively engaged in their development.
Yeah.
If you're not engaged, I mean, your manager's not going to be engaged as well. So you play a part there too, and you have to have some interest. And
Elizabeth, really, well, first, Mary, any additional thoughts from your end or
Ha! I actually have lots of questions, and I I learned so much from you guys. I know I'm not an MSL. I don't manage MSLs, but I learned so much from the leaders that we talked to, um, about ideas for. I mean, I've learned a lot here that I feel like I'm going to take into my reviews next week with my team,
Mhm.
and being able to identify development for them. But I mean, I even sent text messages out to several of my MSL director contacts for ideas for something completely unrelated,
Mhm.
because people leadership is people leadership.
Yeah.
And so I'm just so grateful that you came on and shared what you shared. And I could probably yank a whole lot more information out of you if we had time. So I just wanted to say thank you for joining us on this chilly 65-degree Austin, Texas day.
I know. I know. Talking
It's
to people in
nice.
Derby Day, and it was like 20. I'm like, sorry.
I hear you. I hear you. Elizabeth, it's been really a pleasure to get to know you a little bit. Mary said great things, and this time Mary was actually right. Yeah, Mary. So kudos to you for
Th-
being right
Thank
once this
you.
week. That's really good. You're welcome. Yeah, actually, I should be really nice. Like I said, you hooked me up with this jersey, and I have to wear the Longhorns. So thank you for that.
Oh, I'm
But
not saying you're
so
not going to get the Longhorn shirt. I just, you got that
That's
one
not off the
first.
table. It's not off the table.
uh, Elizabeth, hey, I don't need you to say anything else now. We're good friends. I want to leave it that way. Yeah, I am a punching bag. That is for sure. But to our listeners, if today's episode reminded you that mentorship, self-reflection, continuous learning, they aren't just buzzwords. They're really foundational for a high impact MSL career. So make sure you actually do something with this information. So as Elizabeth indicated, define your goals, seek feedback that can actually propel you forward. Be willing and being proactive with your leader. Raise your hand for things, cross-functional projects. But really prioritize investing in yourself. Because remember, we always says you don't need a title to be a leader, right? So leadership starts long before that. So
Mhm.
that said, if you found this as a good discussion, make sure you share it with a colleague. Make sure you follow us on MSL Lead Chronicles so you never miss another episode. And let us know what steps you're taking to grow and thrive with some of the suggestions that Elizabeth had. So your next big opportunity might start with the choices that you make today. And so until next time, keep learning, keep leading, and keep making an impact.